Welcome into the SEC on CBS postgame report presented by Belfour, restoring more than property. LSU protecting its property against previously undefeated Ole Miss. The Tigers have won 7 straight home games against the Rebels, and they win their latest thanks in part to Jaden Daniels, the Arizona State transfer, who had himself a day. 21 of 28, 248 yards passing, 2 passing touchdowns, 23 carries, 121 rushing yards, and 3 TDs on the ground. He follows this up after an incredible week last week against Florida when he had 3 passing touchdowns and 3 rushing touchdowns. Heisman odds, update them please. Jaden Daniels having himself a couple of weeks, and what a win in the Magnolia Bowl. I mean, this is a statement. 45-20. Consider this. They were trailing 17-3 early in the second quarter, and LSU outscored Ole Miss 42-3 rest of way. 28-0 in the second half. A top 10 upset for LSU as they improved to 6-2. And a lot of that has to go to Jaden Daniels. The credit, this kid is having a great season. Look, outside of week 1, when they lost to Florida State, this would be a 7-1 team. That extra point that was blocked, they got handled at home against Tennessee. And Tennessee looks like a national championship contender. That was the last time they were at home. They come back home and they beat Ole Miss by 35 points as they make an absolute statement. All right, let's hear from Jaden Daniels post-game. He's with our Jenny Dell.
What does this program? What does this mean for this program?
Consistency, and our best players played well today, and our defense, hats off to them in the second half. Obviously, that's a really good offense that they shut down in the second half.
I've got to talk to your quarterback right here. He had an outstanding day out there. Coach said that you have just learned so much and you're transformed. What was working for you out there? What does this one mean?
It means a lot. Like Coach said, just a consistency, trusting the process, our preparation. After the Auburn game, me and Coach had to talk, and he's like, just go out there, trust yourself, trust your receivers, be decisive, and good things will happen.
Good things happen indeed. Jackson Dart, he got outplayed. Jaden Daniels, I mean, he's had himself a couple of weeks. This is the second week in a row that LSU's put 45 on the board. Like, do you remember you remember a couple weeks ago when they hosted Tennessee and they lost 40-13? And I think, look, I'll consider myself, I wrote LSU off. I was like, they're done. They're done. Tennessee hung 40 on the scoreboard. Then they go to Florida, beat them 45-35. Thanks to part Jaden Daniels, had 3 rushing, 3 passing touchdowns. Then this week they come back home with that loss in their minds to the Vols. And they go, man, we need to show out. They get a top 10 upset. Top 10 upset over Ole Miss. Ole Miss is a good football team. But my goodness, what a win for Jaden Daniels and LSU to respond after they lost by 27 to Tennessee a couple weeks ago at home. And they win this one 45-20 at home as again, they outscored the Rebels 28-0 in the second half. And if you go back further than that, they were down 17-3 early in the second quarter. They outscore Ole Miss 42-3 rest of way. Let's get right back to the site. Welcome to the man who was on the call for this game, Ole Miss LSU. Gary Danielson here joins us live on CBS Sports HQ. Gary, what kind of statement did LSU just make?
If I was going to summarize the statement LSU made, is that they got the right man in charge, they're going in the right direction, they're well coached, and their future, which probably will include another year with Jaden Daniels, is bright, and they should be able to build on this. I don't know, maybe, could be. I mean, I don't know if they're a pure contender this year, although, they got a chance with Alabama at home. But watch out, as Brian Kelly builds this team, I think they were on the right track to be LSU that we remember just maybe 4 or 5 years ago.
Gary, I'll be honest, I wrote this LSU team off after they lost at home to Tennessee. I said this will be, maybe a 2 or a 3 loss season. Now they're really in contention here in the SEC West when you consider what they've done the last 2 weeks against Florida and now Ole Miss. What have you seen in the development of this program?
I think patience is the first word by the staff. They knew with the number of new players they brought in the transfer portal. Remember when Brian Kelly took this job, there were only 39 scholarship players. Remember they had to play in that bowl game when they were short of players in that game. And he's patiently with the transfer portal, believed in his players, taught them the right way to do it, said that if we do it this way day after day in practice, it'll show up in the games. And now these last 2 games it has shown up. Now, it's hard not to react when you're in the press, the media. You watch a game, Tennessee comes in here and blows them out like that. We all understand. We all overreact like that. But as a player and as a coach, you just keep your nose down, your head down, you keep working, and you figure if we do it right, we got a lot of good players here, and we'll come out and be what we are. Now, whatever that is for a football team, that's good enough. And I think, as we can see, LSU has a lot of good, talented players.
Indeed, and one of them, the Arizona State transfer, Jaden Daniels, 3 rushing touchdowns, 3 passing touchdowns last week against Florida, follows that up with 2 passing touchdowns and another 3 rushing touchdowns this week against Ole Miss. What do you appreciate about this young man, having been a former college and NFL quarterback yourself, Gary?
That he accepted the challenge. It could have been easy for him to stay right there, playing something that's familiar, came from the West Coast, knew coming into the SEC with a program that was a little bit in transition, he had to trust Brian Kelly. Brian called him up and said, trust me, we're going to do it right, we're going to learn together, you're going to get better here practicing with these guys who are good players and playing against the best players in college football. So I like the way Jaden accepted the challenge of coming into the SEC and playing for LSU.
LSU has now won 7 straight home games in the series against Ole Miss as they get the Magnolia Trophy there at home in Baton Rouge. Gary Danielson joining us here on CBS Sports HQ. Appreciate the conversation, my friend. We'll see you next week.
All right, you got it.
Always great to visit with Gary post-game. Florida and Georgia next week. Love this rivalry. It's what we love about college football. The pageantry, the rivalry. Last year the Dogs beat the Gators 34-7. So lately it really has not been a rivalry, but that's why we play the games. Georgia's won 22 straight games in the regular season. Last regular season loss was to Florida in 2020. Georgia leads the all-time series. They'll look to get another next Saturday. Again, you can see on CBS. Some reaction here. Welcome to 2-time Super Bowl champ Bryant McFadden and CBS Sports HQ college football analyst Barrett Sallee. And Barrett, I want to go to you first because you and I talked about this a few weeks ago, and I wrote off LSU after the loss to Tennessee when they hung 40 on the. I said this is the team that we expected LSU to be. That they were going to be just middle of the pack. They'd be not that great. And my gosh, they made a statement today, Barrett.
Yeah, they really did. I love the way that offense has evolved with Jaden Daniels at quarterback. It's almost like the Wake Forest slow mesh without the slow part. Jaden Daniels, he keeps it in there for a very long time, but he's smart. He always makes the right decisions. And Hakeem, you mentioned, we kind of wrote him off. There's really only one reason we wrote LSU off, special teams. And we talked about, they mentioned on the broadcast, how Polian has done a terrible job on special teams. You look back at the Florida State game, why'd they lose? Special teams. Why'd they lose? Well, Tennessee obviously is better than LSU, but first play of the game, opening kickoff, fumble. 5 plays later, Tennessee scores and the game pretty much over. So this is a really solid football team that has progressed every single week. I love what they're doing with Jaden Daniels now. And had it not been for some special teams, we probably would be talking about LSU as a top 10 team.
Yeah, the intangibles was the issue for LSU. You're talking about special teams, miscues on either side. But now what we're seeing from LSU is that they're more fundamentally sound in regards to the team's element. But Jaden Daniels has been the biggest difference maker for this team. One thing I know about football, if you got a quarterback, you got a shot. If you don't have a quarterback, you don't have no shot at all. And what he's doing is he's putting the team on his back and his legs, leading them in rushing, and then just becoming a playmaker when they need plays to be made. What we saw today was pocket presence. When he had time to go through his progressions, what we saw today, a sense of urgency. They break the pocket and make things happen. And most importantly, smart, clean football. That's what we're seeing right now from Jaden Daniels. And because of that, he's probably been, I was going to say, the hottest quarterback in 2 weeks of play in the SEC, but I can't disrespect Hendon Hooker based on what he's done over the last 2 weeks. But right behind Hendon Hooker, I think Jaden Daniels has been the hottest quarterback in the SEC.
Well, we saw Hendon Hooker and the Vols hang 40 on LSU a couple weeks ago. And at that point, we were like, that's what we were, the assessment of LSU was like, okay, it's going to be another year. If you took the over on their win total of 8, you shouldn't have done that. We told you not to take the over because we didn't think they were going to beat. And now here they are sitting with 6 wins. And that's very much in play when you consider how much this program has developed. Now, I'm not saying they're going to go and beat Alabama in 2 weeks' time here. But they've certainly progressed week in and week out. And Barrett, you go back to week 1, and look, I get it. It's going to be natural progression, right, from week 1 of the season now to week 8. And I understand that. But when we saw Jaden Daniels against Florida State, there were times where he looked lost. And I guess rightfully so, but you'd hope that Brian Kelly would have his kids prepared. But I remember talking postgame with you, and we said at times he looked a little bit lost in that game, not knowing where receivers were. And now he's made, big-time progress. Consider what he did last week against Florida and now this week against Ole Miss.
Yeah, there's no doubt. And I think going back to that Florida State game, there were 2 things at play. One, Jaden Daniels' offensive line let him down. I mean, he was one read and bail because he had to be. And then also, it seemed like he hadn't clicked with any of his receivers at that point, especially Kayshon Boutte. I mean, I think this is a team right now. It's not just Kayshon. They've got a lot of different receivers who they trust, specifically Neighbors, who was one of the reasons they lost the first game on special teams. So I think that they've progressively moved forward with this offense. And it's something that Brian Kelly said this week, that they laid the foundation to this offense early and then started building about 2 weeks ago. Last week, obviously, with Florida, Daniels had a big game, and then obviously you see him now. But now they're starting to mix some other people into that. The rushing has been Jaden Daniels' deal for the last couple of weeks. But if you look in the middle of the game today against Ole Miss, it was Josh Williams getting those dirty yards at 76 total. That's something that needs to continue. Whether it's Josh Williams or somebody else, Emory or whoever, they need to find somebody to complement Daniels, and it might be a different person on a week-in, week-out basis, because at some point, you're going to be putting Daniels in situations where he could get hurt.
Yeah, and today, I think the total team-wise, from that standpoint, they played their best ball game. You talked about the running element. You talk about Jaden Daniels. The offensive line-wise, they won the battle in the trenches. And then defensively, remember, this was an opportunity for LSU defense to really show the growth, playing against the best Russian attack in the SEC, being able to lower them based on their averages, not to mention in total yards as well. They made life extremely difficult for Jackson Dart and his crew. And because of that, we saw an outstanding performance in the second half defensively from LSU. An outstanding total complete effort. Clearly the best game that we've seen from LSU the entire season.
All right, time now for the SEC on CBS Player of the Game, presented by Belfor, restoring more than property. And we all can agree that there's one player of the game in this game. His name was Jaden Daniels. What I want to point out, B-Mac, is the fact that LSU was trailing 17-3 early in the second quarter, and Jaden Daniels and company outscored the Rebels 42-3 rest of way. Where's the defense? But also, Jaden Daniels putting on a clinic.
No question. He's my player of the game. He put the team on his back. He never seemed to be uncomfortable. He was always cool, calm, relaxed in the pocket. And he's just a smooth player. He makes it look so easy. And that would bother me if I was a defender playing against Jaden Daniels, because he never seemed to be uncomfortable, stressed out. He's always relaxed. So, yes, he is my player of the game. You talk about what he had. 5 total touchdowns, almost 400 yards of total offense, 369 to be exact. No miscues, made play after play after play against an undefeated team. So no question, he is my player of the game. But because I'm a defender, I have bias towards my defender. So let me give the defense from LSU a shout out as well. Talking about giving up those points in the first half, surrender 14 points in the first quarter. For the rest of the ball game, only allowed 6 points to that type of offense that was unbelievable on running the football. Total offense, very, very consistent. I mean, shout out to the Bayou Bengals defense, by the way they did a great job in neutralizing Ole Miss offense in the second half.
Yeah, shout out to Matt House. I mean, that guy did his job against Ole Miss. Ole Miss, one of the highest scoring teams in FBS, and he stopped the lane train dead in their tracks right there in Baton Rouge, Barrett.
Yeah, I mean, there's no doubt. And that defense, look, I think when we looked at LSU's defense before the season, I don't necessarily think there was a concern with the front seven. You knew what they could do. They were deep. Ojulari is a fierce pass rusher, all that stuff. I think there was a little concern in the secondary. Not that necessarily we're too concerned consistently with LSU, but from an experience standpoint, they lost a lot in that defensive backfield. And for them to come up and play like this, play like they have really since even in week 1 against Florida State, I think it shows that, House is doing a great job, but also these players are buying in, not just to what the defense is selling, but sort of the feeling, the identity of the program. It feels like the entire DNA of LSU has sort of built around what Jaden Daniels brings, and that's that, like BMAC said, how calm, cool, and collected he is. So it doesn't seem like they're missing assignments all that much. They're all playing smart defensively, and I think that is it's a character trait that I think has developed throughout the course of the season, and you're seeing that sort of shine through over the last couple of weeks.
And Barrett, real quickly, LSU still has a shot here in the SEC West. I mean, I want you to explain their path still, that they still have a shot even with 2 losses.
Well, one of them's an ACC loss, so that doesn't matter. The other one's a cross-division loss. So if they go out there and beat everybody in the SEC West and finish 7-1, they're in. They're in the SEC championship game. And look, I think that's cart before the horse a little bit. But they play Alabama in a couple weeks. We know sometimes Nick has problems with running quarterbacks. Moving forward from there, it's not unreasonable that they could win out if they beat Alabama. In fact, at Arkansas, it's a little tough place to play. I get it, the Golden Boot, and A&M's not going to outscore them. So really, if they're able to get by Alabama, then one of the craziest storylines of the year could happen.
So what you're saying is there's a chance. That's what he's saying, BMAC. He's saying there's a chance.
Like Lloyd Christmas and Dumb and Dumber.
Yes. So you're saying there's a chance.
They got a fighting chance. I agree with Barrett. Seeing what they were able to do today, and you get the luxury of having Alabama come to the crib as well. You know that stadium is going to be electric. The atmosphere will be in their favor. They take care of the Crimson Tide. I know you got Arkansas, and of course we know about the struggles coming from A&M offensively. You have to like their chances. I mean, yes. And think about this. If we had this conversation, let's say in August, early September, even mid-September, is there a chance for LSU to be first in the West? We probably all say no, not a fighting chance at all. No. Yeah, even if we go back and you talked about when they lost to Tennessee, you were ready to just to kick them in the dirt, right? So in a weeks of play, we saw how the course of their season changed dramatically, and they're just stacking wins on top of wins. Not to mention, there's a little bit of chaos going on in the West right now as well. So yes, they got a bye week. They get Alabama at home, and I agree with Barrett. One thing we know about Nick Saban's defense, a mobile, athletic quarterback that can make things happen with their legs has always caused issues for them. We saw Hendon Hooker last week. Now, Jaden Daniels, he doesn't have the wide receivers that Hendon Hooker has the luxury of throwing the football to, but what we're seeing now is the chemistry being established between the quarterback and the wide receivers. And anytime you have a big ball game at your house, anything can happen.
Yeah, and Hakeem, it's funny. I remember sitting here after the Florida State LSU game in the middle of the night because it was really, really late. And all of us were laughing at LSU. We were laughing at how undisciplined they looked, not just on special teams, but all over the place, how sloppy it was, and that Brian Kelly has not had this team prepared. He did a horrible job in fall camp, and the world was getting set on fire. Everything's going to collapse in Baton Rouge. I mean, Brian Kelly, in terms of coach of the year, I'm not necessarily saying he's going to get it. I mean, Josh Heupel probably is. But if this turnaround continues, he deserves a lot of recognition for what he's done.
Yeah, I'm not going to give him coach of the year, but I get it. What you're referring to. I mean, look, yes, if they get to the SEC championship, beat Alabama, fine. Then yes, we'll have that conversation, and then we can talk about how he can talk about his family all he wants to, because his family is doing pretty well right now. Jaden Daniels with 11 total touchdowns over the last 2 weeks, handing Ole Miss their first loss of the season. What a win for LSU and Bryant Kelly as they take down Ole Miss 45-20. Bryant, McFadden, Barrett, Sallee break it down for us here on CBS Sports HQ, presented by Belfour. Hey, check out BMAC on his podcast, All Things Covered, with former LSU star and Vikings corner Patrick Peterson. Entertaining and engaging as they talk to some of the biggest names in both the sports and entertainment worlds. All Things Covered. Download, subscribe today. You can also watch on YouTube.
Do you want a sports network that delivers everything that matters about the game? The highlights, the picks, the instant analysis. No yelling, no fake debates, no politics. Hit the subscribe button and never miss a moment.